All right, motherboards need to be compatible with the other parts of the system. So I don't mean to oversimplify by saying, basically all you got to worry about when you're building a computer is, does the motherboard, CPU, and memory match up? But quite honestly, that is the main thing. Okay. In other words, I can't go pick a motherboard. This should stand to reason. I can't go pick a motherboard that fits AMD processors, but I bought an Intel i7 processor. That's not going to work, right? So there are boards specifically for AMD. There are boards specifically that fit Intel. You have to look at that in the motherboard documentation. It will identify the different processors that are supported on this board. A CPU socket is just a certain number of pins. So the old Pentium 4s used to be 423s and 478s. Now you've got LGA sockets 775 and beyond for your i3, i5, i7 processors. The particulars of that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter in the sense that I don't need to be able to physically tell the difference between these two. This is really just about in situations where you're replacing exactly what failed. Okay? In situations where you're building, making sure that these components work together. So the motherboard is only going to have sockets that fit AMD or Intel, not both. Okay? Maybe your motherboard is going into a server. Well, that's just kind of a vague thing, but in a server, they typically have additional components. They probably have multiple sockets, so multi-socket and server often go hand in hand, although it's not a direct correlation. They probably have multiple sockets. They probably do have different kinds of processors. They probably have connectors for higher speed drives like 10,000 RPM, 15,000 RPM, serial attached SCSI, for instance. They probably have RAID controllers, which allow us to have multiple hard drives connect to the same controller in a high availability scenario. Again, some of these things, if you're going, wow, we're talking about a lot of different stuff, not going into a lot of detail, that's because in certain areas, we just don't need that much detail. We'll get into the particulars. Right now, we're just talking about motherboard compatibility. If you want a server and you expect it to have 2 processors, then you need 2 sockets. If you expect to have 6 hard drives for data storage for your entire network, and you want to set that up in a RAID configuration for high availability, well, then you need to make sure you've got a RAID controller. Or I've got a slot that I can put a RAID controller in. Okay. And then you have desktops, you have mobile. Obviously the mobile and even some of the desktops are going to be much, much smaller than the other boards. So that's really all we're looking at. Okay. Predominantly motherboard, CPU, memory. Those 3 things work together. Then I move on to say, does this motherboard have all of the sockets and capabilities that I expect it to have? If not, is there an add-on card that I can provide to get that? And then really the final one is, okay, what kind of case, this is just for building, what kind of case will fit this motherboard? Those are all the things you have to look at to make sure that a motherboard is compatible.